records with the Tea Party in 2010 because all of you come out and work, like Marcia was talking about, and get involved. We elect the largest swing class in the history of Congress since 1930. It's really incredible, right? It's pretty darn exciting. I was in DC that night. It was really amazing. I'll never remember it. November 10th, we had this huge party. My kids are there, my family's there. It's unbelievable as we watch the returns coming in, as we watch Congress flip. All these guys come in, they all get inaugurated. It's so exciting because everything is going to change. And then, nothing changes. Literally, nothing changes. It's really important we remember this. And I think we don't think about this enough, and I think we let Congress off the hook. The House has the power of the purse, which means virtually nothing happens unless they spend the money on it. And what did they do with that power after 2010? Nothing. It was pretty distressing for me as a guy who was sort of at the point of the spear of the Tea Party movement. And then I started to watch the Republican Party co-opt the Tea Party. And it was a really interesting process to be on the inside of, because the party itself had no enthusiasm, and all the enthusiasm was on the outside with the Tea Party movement. So the Republicans really wanted the Tea Party, and amazingly the Democrats really wanted the Tea Party to be Republican. This was really important to them, right? Because in order to demonize us, they had to make sure it was all Republican. And so I watched the movement slowly get co-opted and eaten alive by the Republican Party. I watched guys go on TV and call themselves Tea Partiers and then vote in ways that are just absolutely unbelievable to me. They were not standing for the values that we stood for. They were not standing for constitutional governance, for fiscal responsibility, for free markets, right? These were the guys that we were electing, but they were not our guys when they got to Washington, D.C. So as I watched this whole thing unfold, I decided, okay, this is not the solution. This is my 8th grade civics class. I was taught you vote for the right people, and if you put enough of them in office, the right things happen, but it wasn't working. And so I stepped away. And I said, if it doesn't work, I'm not gonna do it. And I was getting asked this question over and over when I traveled around and spoke. What do we do? What do we do, right? That's a good rhetorical question to ask yourself if you're not involved in politics. But if you're like Marcia and you're standing up here, if you're like me and you're standing up here, you need to have answers. It's not right to come and lecture at a place like this and talk to people and say, I don't know, I have no idea, but I really didn't know what to do. I founded an organization called Citizens for Self-Governance, and the point of founding that organization was one idea, which is that there was something missing in our system of governance that was fundamental to the system. There was an idea that had fallen out of favor, and it was very simply the idea of self-governance. Right? This idea that it's about individual responsibility, that we practice self-governance with ourselves, at home, with our families, in our community. And then I crossed paths with a guy by the name of Michael Ferris. Is there anybody in here that knows the name Mike Ferris? If you homeschooled your kids, then you owe Michael Ferris a debt of gratitude. If you know anybody who homeschooled their kids. In the 1970s, homeschooling your kids, by the way, was illegal in all 50 states in one form or another. It's hard to imagine that now. Fundamental right of parents to decide how their kids were educated have been taken over by the federal government. Ferris was a young attorney, decided that was wrong, and he decided to fix it, and he did. And that's why it's legal today. And Ferris came to me and he said this, Mark, are you satisfied with what you're accomplishing in politics? The answer was self-evident. It was no, I wasn't satisfied. And he said there's a reason. Because what you're trying to do is put good people in Washington, D.C., and it does not matter how many people you put in Washington, D.C. You can have 60 good senators. You can have 70 good senators. You can have 120, 130, 150, 300 good members in the House of Representatives, and you will not get the governance you want because we have a broken structure in America. We do not have a personnel problem in Washington, D.C. We have a structure problem in Washington, D.C. Now, I hear a lot of people say this to me when we talk about Convention of States. Mark, here's the deal. If they would just enforce the Constitution, if they would just follow the Constitution that we have, everything would be just fine. Anybody ever hear that? Yeah. I've said it myself a lot of times. They don't pay attention to the Constitution. But here's the real deal about the Constitution. I said that to Mike Ferris when he brought me this project. And he said, which Constitution are you talking about? I thought that was a really weird question. I only know about one Constitution. He said, no, we have 2 constitutions in America. We have the one you can visit in the National Archives under glass. It's beautiful. Everybody should see it. It's really inspiring. You guys might be carrying it around in a pocket constitution. Easy to understand, compact, well-written, and I think divinely inspired. And then we have the Constitution under which you and I today live. That Constitution, if you want to buy it, you can only get it from the government printing office. It's called the Annotated Constitution. The last full printing was 2,738 pages. It contains all the cases you hate. It contains that Commerce Clause case. It contains the Obergefell marriage decision. It contains Obamacare. That is the Constitution, whether we like it or not, under which we live today. And when Congress says they're following the Constitution, genuinely, they are. Because everything they're doing is within the auspices of all those decisions made by the Supreme Court. So that leads me to a question. If we don't think it's right, if we don't like what they're doing according to that Constitution, what do we do about it? How do we fix it? Is electing people enough? Well, we've proven that, right? So you get the House, you get the Senate, and nothing changes, and now we get the president. I don't think they're ever going to fix Washington, D.C. from Washington. But we have the power to do it, and this is extraordinary and untouched. It is an unmined gem in the United States Constitution. I'm going to go way back in history to September 15th, 1787. September 15th, I think, is the most important day in American history, primarily because on September 15th, my lovely wife was born. So I cannot forget September 15th. But also September 15th, 1787, 2 days before the end of convention, Colonel George Mason stands to address the men assembled. Remember, it's 2 days before the end of convention. They've been there for months. They're tired, it's hot, they're ready to go home. And he stands and addresses the assembly and he says, we have a fundamental problem with the document we've drafted. We've given the power to the federal government to propose amendments should they deem them necessary, but we failed to give that same power to the people acting through their state legislatures. And then he asks a question which to me resonates over 2 centuries later. He asks, are we so naive that we believe that a federal government that becomes a tyranny will propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny? I wish we had video. You guys laughed. I bet you they laughed, right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Nobody restrains their own tyranny. We have no examples in human history of a government restraining its own tyranny. So he proposes this idea that we ought to give state legislatures the power to call a convention of states to propose amendments specifically to restrain the federal government. You know what the men assembled did? It's an amazing thing because it's really unusual. Madison's notes have these words in it, nin com, which means no comment in Latin. There's no debate. There is no debate. Men who debated everything, who debated what kind of prayer should be said at the meeting, whether they should have a prayer, could they pay a preacher to come? They debated everything. They didn't debate this. And in fact, it was unanimously adopted, one of the few things in the Constitution to give us the power to do this.
Sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Our success depends on you, so we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.